I am a very visual person. Therefore, all the slides that I will be presenting this morning will only be pictures so that you'll be able to engage in what I will be saying. So, to begin with, earlier we had our meeting with the administration of the college, and we had this handshake that would signify partnership. Although we did something better, we did this one apart from the typical handshake. So, next slide, please. Thank you. Okay. I thank you. Okay. So, can I stand? Typical teacher. Okay. So, showcasing the first slide, of course, is the flag of two nations, together with a picture of the facade of the universities where we came from. So yours, of course, is found on your left side, and ours in the right side. And 2 weeks from now, the University of Santo Tomas will be celebrating its 414th year of foundation. So we are the oldest in Asia, 25 years older than Harvard University. So we exist from 1611 until the present time. So yours, of course, was given and highlighted by your dean a while ago. So I think I won't dwell on it because you know better than I am. But of course, we are truly grateful for being given an opportunity to be here this morning. Okay. Last year, the Philippines and Indonesia commemorated its 75th partnership. This is the logo coming from the Embassy of Indonesia in the Philippines, which signifies two special symbols that would remind us of the two nations that are very similar and very much alike. Of course, you have there the Garuda, and we have our Sarimanok. It says, the logo with the tagline, Philippines, Indonesia at 75, pagkakaibigan, persahabatan, friendship. Features the mythical birds of both countries, Sarimanok of the Philippines and Garuda of Indonesia, bathed in the colors of their respective flags. The blue color of the number 75 represents the sky, as the mythical birds soar to greater heights, while also symbolizing the aspiration of both countries to take their bilateral relations to greater heights with this diplomatic milestone. Since the establishment of their diplomatic relations on 24 November of 1949, the Philippines and Indonesia have been more than just neighbors. Both are partners in progress, bound by common aspirations and shared values, and a commitment to fostering peace and stability in the region. Indonesia and the Philippines enjoys cordial bilateral relationship in spirit of kinship. The history between both nations has been one of the most important relationships in Southeast Asia. Relations between the two nations stretch back millennia. The Srivijaya and Majapahit empires of ancient Indonesia had ruled over territories and vassal kingdoms in the southern and central Philippines. Both countries were colonized by Spain during the age of imperialism. You might argue with me because Indonesia is or has long been a Dutch colony. But to share with you a brief interaction between the Philippines and Indonesia way, way before you were colonized by the Dutch. The Philippines and the islands of the Philippines has been under the Spanish colonial power for 333 years, from 1565 to 1898. Moluccas, or Spice Islands. Moluccas, or Spice Islands, on the other hand, were 5 islands of volcanic origin: Ternate, Tidore, Moti, Makian, and Bacan, located west of the coast of the island of Halmahera in the Indonesian archipelago. For your information, in the Philippines, we have a place in one of our provinces, Cavite, which is known as Ternate, because it has been found out that the earliest settlers from then, that place, were migrants from Indonesia during the Portuguese time when they went to your place and they have migrated to the Philippines. Okay. So the Spaniards first made contact with the Maluku Islands during Magellan's expedition. In 1521, the ships of Magellan's expedition reached the Moluccas, where they stayed for about 6 weeks on the island of Tidore. The Maluku archipelago was governed from the Spanish colonial capital in Manila. In this place, the Spaniards also founded a farm, which, however, was promptly destroyed by the Portuguese. Jose Rizal is the Philippines' national hero, a name that placed our country in world map. He also became influential in Indonesia. He has been a key player for the Philippines' strive for independence from the Spanish colonial power. It is humbling to take note that he is admired in Indonesia, and some Indonesian scholars even called him hero because his writings inspired anti-colonial movements in your country. Relations were officially re-established in 1949, with Sukarno being warmly welcomed in the Philippines and the de facto Republic of Mindanao. The two nations became military allies, with the governments of each nation supporting one another. I would just like to share with you that in the Philippines, we made a postage stamp of the meeting between Sukarno and our own President Quirino at that time. The foundation of bilateral relations between Indonesia and the Philippines was initially set up in the 1950s by the top leaders of the two countries through personal arrangements, mutual courtesy visits, or meetings of senior officials. In order to strengthen the bilateral relationships, the two countries signed several agreements, most of them related to border management. To be honest, it was mentioned that Suharto visited the Philippines several times. In fact, considers it a province and his second home. So in history, so these are some of the postage stamps that commemorates the agreements signed between two countries. So these are some of the many agreements signed by two nations. So the Treaty of Friendship signed here in Jakarta on 21 June 1951. Immigration agreement between the government of the Republic of Indonesia and the government of the Republic of the Philippines signed in Jakarta on July 4 of 1956. The Filipinos love Indonesia. We keep on going here. The agreements are often signed in your country. Followed by a joint directives and guidelines of implementation of the agreement signed in Manila on September 14, 1965. The exchange notes between two nations on January 31 of 1966. The implementing rule and regulation on the border crossing on July 1, 1975, agreement on border trade between the two governments on August 1 of 1974, an agreement on defense and security cooperation between the government of the Republic of Indonesia and the government of the Republic of the Philippines in 1997. The change of governments both in Indonesia and the Philippines have never changed cordial and fully cooperative relations between two nations, handling issues related to border crossing, undocumented Indonesian nationals in the Philippines, or transnational crime. Indonesia and the Philippines have a history of helping each other in solving separatist pressures and problems. Both nations consists of people belonging to the Austronesian ethnic group. The Malay language is official language in both nations, being the national language of Indonesia, Bahasa Indonesia. Am I right? And being a co-official in the Philippines alongside Filipino and English. Both nations are the founding fathers of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and the members of non-aligned movement and the APEC. According to Indonesian political observer Ikrar Nusa Bakti in a 2017 book, the Philippines and Indonesia have generally avoided turbulence in their bilateral relations. They have always maintained ties through geography, trade, migration, and intermarriage. Former Filipino Foreign Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. also mentioned in 2019 that the country's natural affinity is essentially derived from linguistic, cultural, and religious ties, as well as mutual shared defense. As trading partners, the Philippines and Indonesia have enjoyed agreements in various industries. These include satellite internet, coal supply, energy, data centers, construction, and infrastructure. Even if there are changing governments between these two nations, it did not affect their cordial and fully cooperative relations, even through issues related to the ones I mentioned a while ago. Indonesians in the Philippines primarily reside in Mindanao, with notable concentration in Davao City and surrounding areas. They are descendants of migrants who have historically settled in the Philippines, with some group referred to as Maroris. On the other hand, Indonesian Sangir communities can be found in Sarangani and Balut Islands in Davao del Sur, as well as in South Cotabato, Sultan Kudarat, and Davao Peninsula. Furthermore, there are around 7,451 Filipinos in Indonesia as of 2022. Most Filipinos hold managerial, technical, or professional level positions. Ayan. This and more proved the rich partnership and alliance between two nations who shared significant cultural similarities, from being neighbors in Southeast Asia to partners in trials and tribulations. We may have differences in terms of religion and some practices, but respect for human life and dignity is the utmost commonality. I would like to end my presentation with my favorite nasi goreng. I'm looking forward to eat one today and the next days that I will be here, because that is what I longed for. That's why it's my second time to be in your country. This all-in-one meal is like the two countries, Indonesia and the Philippines, diverse yet united. Thank you and a blessed day ahead.
Thank you, Professor Melanie. It's a nice gesture, yeah, to show that we are sharing almost the same identity and culture and even language. Yeah? And without further ado, I would like to floor our next speaker, Uh, it's going from, I think the second speaker will be from Associate Professor Janet Atotupu, PhD. She is a history faculty member at UST Faculty of Arts and Letters, and she also holds a Bachelor in Asian Studies, Master in History, and PhD in Southeast Asian Studies. A lifetime member of Philippine Historical Associations, also an active member of Philippines National Historical Society and Philippine Association for Chinese Studies. She is also the author of books and articles on Philippine history and Rizal. The seat is yours. Yeah. Would you like to stand or sit on the? Okay, no problem.
It's difficult to stand. Good morning, everybody. Nasa na? Okay. Ang mga lumad ng Mindanao, that's literally a Tagalog item. And why did I choose that picture? Because most of the lumad actually live beside a major body of water. So the title is Challenges from Past to Present. Next slide, please. Nandito ito. This one. Ha? Sige. Akala ko nandun sa sorry. Ayan. So, Philippines is the map on your, how do you call it? It's on your left side, and specifically, Mindanao is the southernmost part of the Philippines. And when you say Mindanao, it's always correlated. This is the place, this is the second major island, and this is where there is a very, very significant number of Muslims in this area. However, there is another factor to this. Aside from the Muslims, there is also another group of people in this area, and they are known as the Lumad. So, Lumad, actually in English, they're known as the indigenous population. So, here on this map, you see the map of Mindanao and then the various Lumad that are currently identified. Now, there are also other Lumads which are not identified at all, but they are just grouped into the bigger group of people. But sometimes, like among the Bagobos, which is what I will discuss, there will be other groups of people like Bagobong Panay or Bagobong Tagbanwa. They will have similarities, but then they will have distinctive differences. Next slide, please. So, who are the indigenous people? I got this definition from Rudolfo Stavenhagen, who was the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the fundamental rights and freedom of the indigenous population. So according to them, this indigenous population and the acronym that's actively used in practically all the readings that I have seen are the letters I and P. They are the peoples and natives who had historical continuity from pre-invasion and pre-colonial societies. So pre-colonial for us will be before the arrival of the Spaniards, and even the Americans and even the Japanese. They are still there until today. They develop their own territories and consider themselves distinct from the other sectors of societies. And they are still, actually that's not true anymore because they are so meek, they are so helpless, they are so, what will be another word for that? They're not really weak, but they are more on the meek side, M-E-E-K. So what they do is if they are challenged, they would simply retreat going into the interior parts of the forest. But then that cannot be helped anymore nowadays. So they form at present, they are not dominant, and they are determined to preserve, develop, and transmit future generations, and they are also fighting for their ancestral rights, which is known as the ancestral domains. They're fighting for specific territories. But something happens to that. And then, of course, their ethical identity as a basis for their continued existence as a group of people. They have their own culture patterns, social institutions, and their own legal systems. Now, these legal systems, as long as it is in accordance with the Constitution of the Philippines, this is tolerated. It's known as the autonomous regions. So The Lumad of Mindanao, these are the indigenous population, comprise 61% of the indigenous population of the Philippines. You see, they are more than the majority. Now, I would like also to reiterate, aside from the Lumad, that's the term we use to the people who are, they are in Mindanao, they are not Muslims, at the same time, they are not also Christians. Although so much of them, like the Yakan in Basilan, they have already converted to Islam. Uh, they continue their way of life as they have observed since the pre-colonial times. Okay, next slide, please. Land view. So the Philippines inherited the Regalian doctrines from the Spanish until the American period. The Spanish discovery of the archipelago gave, in 1565, usually the standard is 1521, but I don't like that because Magellan came and then he left, and then for 50 years there was nothing at all. But in 1565, Miguel Lopez de Legazpi possessed the territories of the Philippines, and there was an active campaign from Cebu all the way to the northernmost part of the Philippines. And they were also acknowledged by the King of Spain in 1572 or 1571. So they had the possessor, I didn't know this word existed, possessory rights. In the Treaty of Paris of December 10, 1898, when Philippines was ceded to the United States, both Spanish and American administrators did not recognize the communal and ancestral domains of the indigenous communities. The doctrine appeared in the 1935, 1973, and the 1987 constitutions of the Philippines. Today, we are still following the 1987 constitutions. Now, what is this Regalian doctrine? It states that all lands of the public domain, waters, minerals, coals, petroleum, and other minerals are forces of potential energy, fisheries, forests, timber, wildlife, flora and fauna, and other resources are owned by the state. So notice that there is the total and absolute disregard for the concepts or even the identity of the indigenous population. The cutting of trees, and when they start doing that, they also make roads into the territories of the indigenous population. They undergo logging because there is, until today, a very strong demand for timber. And then these logging companies will also employ guards in order to, if it's your territory, you fight to retain the territory. So the logging companies would employ guards who are not from the territory. Usually they are not from Mindanao. For instance, they come from Cebu or they come from the Luzon area. So automatically notice that there is no relationship, not even the knowledge of the languages. Because here in the Philippines, we speak Tagalog, like four of us. When we communicate, we speak Tagalog. I speak Bisaya because I grew up in Mindanao, but Mr. Gian Mayo speaks Pangasinense and others. So each one of us have our own distinct languages. So if you are a Lumad, for instance, if you're a Bagobo, they have their own language. And then the logging company will get people from Manila, so they will speak Tagalog. And there is no commonality between a Tagalog and the Bagobo language. Even if I grew up in Mindanao, I don't understand Bagobo at all. I don't even speak a single word of Bagobo. So the logging companies employ guards to enforce the concepts of whatever these are to be enforced. Most of the times, these are against or these are contrary to the concepts of the indigenous population or the Lumad. From the very start, they would coerce the local population, the Lumad, to sell their lands at a very, very pitifully low prices. And their datus, the heads of the Lumad, they have no control over these developments, and they have no other choice but to follow, even if these are not in accordance with the tribal laws. Next, please. So I will in a very in a very simple way, I will talk only about the Bagobo, which I've been mentioning. Mount Apo, located in the southern part of Davao. This is in Mindanao. Davao is a major place in Mindanao. This is a land by the Bagobos, and they still occupy this land. It's the tallest mountain in the Philippines, and until now, most people come to Mindanao because they want to climb Mount Apo. It is a dominant volcano, so these are the Bagobo people. So he is a datu of the Bagobo. Notice that, they look totally different from us. Look at the culture, look at the beads, even their songs and how they dress up. They're totally different from us, the mainstream Filipinos. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, Mount Apo is a dormant volcano, meaning it does not erupt anymore. I really don't know because Mount Pinatubo was also declared a dormant volcano, and then after 600 years, all of a sudden, it did not only erupt, it literally exploded. So one half of Mount Pinatubo is lost. So it's now relatively, it's lower. So it's a dormant volcano, and it's also the home to the Bagobo tribe. And they call it also as the home of Apo Sandawa. Apo is a native term, even as Tagalog use it, and literally I also hear it from the Kapampangan and the other people of Mindanao. When we say Apo, we are referring to the grandparents, and sometimes even older than the grandparents, because grandparents, we call them lolo or lola. But if you say Apo, these are people older than the lolo and the lola. So it's the home to Apo Sandawa, and therefore, being the home of Apo Sandawa, this mountain is more sacred than the other mountains. In 1905, the American lawmakers, so United States claimed the Philippines from 1898 until 1946. 1905, the American lawmakers allowed very huge tracts of lands to be leased to Japanese corporations for cotton plantations. And then later on, it became abaca plantations. The Bagobos not only lost their lands, but also the lives of their magani, or warriors. Sometimes it's also known as bagani. They fought for the rights of their lands. In fact, the source that I have, they would have numbers to it, but I said, I'll not make this complicated. I'll make it as simple as possible. These Bagobos fought side by side with their Filipino and American soldiers against the Japanese occupation. But this knowledge, this information, is conveniently forgotten in historical narratives. Today, the new enemy, as of 1987, is the Philippine National Oil Company. Because for them, Mount Apo is a vast storehouse of geothermal energy awaiting to answer the needs of the modern world. Now, notice, this is, as I have mentioned, this is a common event now. There are people who always climb the mountains every day because for them it is a huge honor to be able to climb up to the summit. In fact, there are so many pictures of people at the summit. But in doing so, you destroy the mountains. You don't only destroy the flora and the fauna, they leave behind so many garbage. And then, of course, they would create activities that will entice more tourism. And this is not at all regulated by the local government. And then, this is just one picture showing illegal mining activities. So there are mining activities, but there are also as much as illegal mining. And then, of course, this is one of the sites of the Philippine National Oil Company. Next, please. Okay, it's also the home to the biggest eagle in the world, the monkey-eating eagle, and it's also the most endangered of all the eagle species. Next. And then, yes, I will introduce to you some, but I will not discuss them anymore. I will introduce to you some of the lumad. So these are the tibolis. You can find the tiboli in the southwestern part of Mindanao around Lake Cebu. Usually, they are known for their weaving and the designs of their weaving, which is known as the tinalak. And then, of course, you have the manobo. Aside from the bagobo, this one is the manobo. Manobos are from the Bukidnon area. Next, please. Konti na lang. The Tiruray group, and then the Mandaya tribe. Next. Then the Subanon in the Zamboanga Peninsula, the Bilaan from the Socsargen area. I think this is the last one. Ay, meron pa. Matig Salug, and then the Talaandig. Meron pa references na yan. And then, sunod, thank you very much. Ayan, this is another group of people, the Bajau. So, magandang umaga means good morning. Madaming salamat means thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Janet, for your introductions or explanations towards the culture and other cultural products of people of Philippines. For the second speaker we have today is from Associate Professor Arki. Professor Arki is a chairperson of the UST Department of History and also holds a Bachelor in Asian Studies, Masters in Asian Studies, University of Philippines with scholarship and PhD in history. Also specializes in the Philippine foreign policy, diplomacy, and South Korean democratizations. Teaches diplomatic history, modern East Asia, and contemporary Asia at UST. Also an active member of the Teacher Education Council of the Department of Education, representing the Social Studies Teachers and Executive Council of the National Commission on Culture and Arts, National Committee on Historical Research. Without further ado, please give Professor Arki a warm applause to give his or her presentation for today.
Salamat pagi. Nama saya Dr. Arki Resos. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yeah. Thank you so much. Terima kasih. I'm going to discuss about the political culture and partisanship, distortion and direction of Philippine democracy from 1986 until 2022. One of the greatest legacy of the United States of America in the Philippines is by giving us democracy. The Philippines has been under the American rule for 48 years. The only problem is that the American democracy that they gave us doesn't fit the Filipino political culture. Political culture is basically defined as the collective attitudes, behaviors, norms that affects politics. So there are certain political culture that doesn't fit American democracy in the Philippines. Next slide. For example, we have the following very strong political culture in the Philippines. The Philippines has a very strong regionalism with which the candidates usually wins because he belongs to a particular region or a particular province. We also have the debt of gratitude, or what we call utang na loob, which is the readiness to show appreciation incurred by people who receive help or favors. We have the sense of camaraderie, or the feeling of trust and friendship among groups of people who have usually known each other for a long time. Close family affinity, which is also common for Indonesians. The belief that family should be together. And political patronage, political support and influence given by someone to a person or a group of people. And finally, populism, which is a very strong appeal to ordinary people who feel that their concerns are disregarded by established elite groups. Next slide. Well, my research work will follow the framework of Ziauddin Sardar, the theory of Orientalism, which stressed that Western and Eastern nations have a big disparity. Democracy is basically defined in two terms, especially in political science. Democracy is procedural in nature. If there is election, if there is a constitution, as well as what we call human rights. Unfortunately, the real essence or the real meaning of democracy is substantive in nature. If there is transparency or there is accountability or there is social justice, that is what the Americans want for the Philippines. However, there are certain political culture that hampers this kind of democracy in our country. Next slide. For example, if you know Ferdinand Marcos Sr., he's the contemporary of Suharto. He has been in the Philippine politics for 21 years, 1965 until 1986. Suharto, I think, was in your country from 1967 until he resigned in 1998. So Suharto is basically older, and he stayed in power for 31 years. Ferdinand Marcos stayed in our country as dictator for 21 years. And these are the major issues. When he ran as president, there is a very strong regionalism that supported him in northern Philippines. Okay? Most Filipinos in northern Philippines would prefer Marcos. There is also constitutional authoritarianism because like the ancient leaders of the Philippines, we have the Lakan, the Datu, or the Hari. Usually, the leader is a father figure. So, Ferdinand Marcos initiated a kind of constitutional authoritarianism in the Philippines that projected him as a father image. There is also the issue of political dynasty because even the wife of Ferdinand Marcos was appointed as governor of Manila, and of course, his second cousin, General Fidel Ramos, was also appointed as the vice chief of staff. Next slide. During the time of Cory Aquino, of course, the first woman president in our country, okay, Marcos was removed by a very popular EDSA People Power Revolution. EDSA is a highway which is comparable to the Jakarta Cikampek. Yeah, that's the place where the revolution took place. It's a very long and huge highway in the Philippines. So Marcos was removed from power by a very popular revolution in 1986. So what were the issues? Number one, of course, the Filipinos would prefer someone who is an underdog. So when the husband of Cory Aquino died, we call that necropolitics, it became a positive issue for Mrs. Aquino to become a very popular candidate. I think you also have your first woman president here before, Sukarno Putri. Megawati Sukarno Putri is like the contemporary of the same as that of Cory Aquino. There is also the sense of camaraderie in the Philippine People Power Revolution where the people united and we become one in order to remove an authoritarian government of Marcos. However, there is a strong family presence in the government of President Aquino because his first cousin was appointed in key positions and many of the family members like that of the government of Marcos were also given very sensitive position under Cory Aquino. And also the utang na loob or debt of gratitude, that is also a Filipino culture where of course the general who supported him was appointed, or rather was given the anointing to become the next president. And he is no other than General Fidel Ramos. Next slide, please. In 1992, of course, General Fidel Ramos, who defended President Cory Aquino from several military adventurism, was elected as president. However, there are certain issues that hound President Ramos. As of this point, we have 17 presidents in the Philippines. So the debt of gratitude, President Cory Aquino anoints General Ramos as presidential candidate of the government. Eventually, he won the election because Cory Aquino was still very popular in 1992. There is also the militarism of the government. Since the president came from the military, he trusted and cooperated, of course, with his military comrades, and they shared common experience. A lot of their, the colleagues of General Ramos, later on President Ramos, were also appointed in sensitive position. There is also the issue of vote padding and shibing done by the military supporters in order to support Ramos. Next slide, please. Then we have in 1998, a very popular actor by the name of Joseph Estrada. He became president, and populism, because he was very popular among the common people, became his vehicle to become successful to be elected as president in 1998. However, he was charged with a lot of corruption, including appointing of midnight cabinet. These are the close drinking buddies of the president who were given very important positions in the government. Close camaraderie among his trusted men resulted also in widespread graft and corruption. And for the second time, in 1986, we have the first revolution. In 2001, the Filipino people had their camaraderie, stood up, and conducted a revolution to remove President Estrada. So Estrada, next slide please, was replaced by no other than Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, the second woman president in our country. However, there are also certain issues like the debt of gratitude. We call that utang na loob. Gratitude, appreciation, and acknowledgement of a commissioner, okay, of the Commission on Elections appointed by the chief executive. So they made electioneering and they make sure that Gloria Macapagal Arroyo would become a president. Okay, so there is widespread cheating in this election. Next, there's continued militarization of the government as part of the debt of gratitude for all loyal military leaders, and the president is conducting loyalty check among those she appointed in very significant position. Next slide. In the 2010 presidential elections, the son of former President Cory Aquino won. And again, necropolitics, if someone died, it gives an advantage because the Filipino people would show their sympathy. Benigno Aquino Jr. won this election. He won it because of his idea of leading by straight path or anti-corruption drive. And of course, the major issue about him is that there is inefficiency in government and indifference to several crises. There is also a marked vindictiveness against previous administration of Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. Next slide, please. In the 2016 election, well, you are aware of President Duterte. He was already sent to the Netherlands to face charges of violations of rights, and of course, he's now going to face the International Criminal Court. He won the campaign because he projected a tough image that he will eradicate all drugs and drug lords in our country, which he was very successful, that there are a lot of people who died in the Philippines without any due process at all. And there is also blatant human rights violation and extrajudicial killings. Duterte also continued the militarization of the government. Next slide. It was surprising that the previous dictator, whom we have removed in 1986, would be restored this time, but his son would become very popular among the Filipino people. It is because Ferdinand Marcos resonates some of the program of the father before. So what were basically the issues? There is the forgive and forget attitude of the Filipinos. If they have not been given the chance to return in the Philippines, the son would have not been elected as president. But the Filipinos are very forgiving people. They wanted to forgive a former dictator. They took a lot of money from our country, but this time they became very popular. And again, for the second time, the Filipinos placed someone in power who was removed from the previous revolution. Then there is also the idea of being a disciplinarian father. President Marcos, like Suharto, was very tough. He was a dictator, he was authoritarian, and the son would like to project the same image, which became very popular. There is also, again, regionalism and very strong regionalistic behavior because Northern Luzon, again, belongs to the Marcos. And, of course, the daughter of the former president, President Duterte, from Mindanao, they would secure the votes there and win the election in 2016. However, there is now a problem between the president, the current president of the Philippines, Marcos, and the vice president, Duterte. Instead of uniting right now, they are constantly bickering with one another. And of course, the Philippines suffers a lot with this kind of situation right now. We don't have unity anymore in the Philippines because the president is attacking the vice president, and the same thing goes for the vice president and vice versa. In conclusion, American democracy is basically not applicable in the Philippines. The United States hope that there will be election, that there will be a very good social justice in the Philippines, but because of strong regionalism, those eligible candidates and those who are qualified to become president of the republic never wins at all because they don't have the base support in the provinces. Next, the debt of gratitude, readiness to show appreciation even if the person is corrupt, as long as he has supported the cause of the candidate. If that candidate wins, he will get a very sensitive position in the government. Sense of camaraderie, there is no more transparency or accountability because sometimes they are good friends in the government, so there is no more justice like in the Philippines. Close family affinities, you have the term nepotism. Brothers and sisters are elected in the Senate. You have governors, vice governor in the Philippines who are husband and wife, and etc. And then political patronage, political support and influence given by someone to a person or a group of people, and populism. As long as the candidate is popular but unqualified, Filipino people would usually elect that leader. Thank you so much. Terima kasih.
Thank you so much, Professor Arki. It resonates deep, yeah, with our situations at the moment, but I'm not going to say too much about it. For the next speaker, once again, thank you, Professor. For the next speaker will be, his name is Gian Paolo Ermayo. I think he is a history teacher, history researcher.
brothers and sisters who did the extraordinary in their service through military campaigns and have continued to serve the people in the public sphere after their military careers. Third, we look into the challenges and responses of the veterans and the leaders in addressing key concerns on the pension and later on non-pension benefits for the veterans and their dependents, as well as the complex legacy of their heroic deeds through memorialization. Under the Philippine Constitution, the state has a moral obligation in taking care of not just the veterans but also their dependents. Provisions of benefits, both pension and non-pension in nature, are basic and foundational matters for the state to fulfill. Contrary to popular belief that Filipino veterans only comprise those who served during the Revolution and the Second World War, the definition was expanded to the members of the armed forces of the Philippines in the post-war period. The birth of the nation involves conflict from early years of the Spanish colonial rule. Rebellions sprouted in the islands. Learning from these bloody experiences, the natives matured and later identified themselves as Filipinos. From these, the reform and propaganda movements emerged, but the Spaniards did not yield to cry of equality. Soon, revolution fanned out throughout the islands, and timely conflict with an emerging American foe fizzled out all hope for Spain to retain its last colonies. Despite the necessary alliance, the Americans followed imperialistic instincts and emerged to be the next master of the islands. So there is a conflict between the Filipinos and the Americans later on, which becomes the Philippine-American War, and is not really, it's considered to be a forgotten war. And then later on, under the American rule, we were also engaged in the Second World War during the time wherein the Japanese invaded the Philippines. And later on, despite the defeat of the defenses in Bataan Corredor, there is a resistance that happened throughout the Second World War, which eventually led to the liberation period. After the Second World War, we are still engaged with the Americans. A steadfast ally and dependent, the Philippine foreign policy usually mirrors the goals of their American friends. On this period, we also saw the emerging trend of war memorialization as a component of the new nationalism. Central to this Filipino-American friendship is the participation of the Philippines in conflict, where the Americans is also involved with. During the Korean War, the extraordinary valor of the men of the battalion combat teams thwarted major offensives of their enemies. The soldiers and civilians professionals of the PhilCon and PhilCag contingents served the people in Danang, Vietnam, through medical and civil actions in harsh conditions during the Vietnam War. So it changed the view of the modern military from agents of war to keepers of peace and order. So this one would be on the left side is the pylon dedicated for the veterans of the Korean War in the Heroes Cemetery in the Philippines. We also have a counterpart in your right side, the Veterans War Memorial for those who served during the Vietnam War. So these are small things for us to memorialize in order for us to remember that these people, although few, were there to provide also assistance and also did their heroic deeds during the war. We now look at our leaders who were the former military officers. General Aguinaldo emerged as top military figure in the successes in the field of battle during the revolution. After the war, he continued to be a powerful local patron of politicians in his province. He will later lose to an election to his former aide-de-camp, Manuel Quezon, in the left side, who mastered American politics and emerged as the Commonwealth's great leader. The Philippines was not spared from destruction and horror of the Pacific War. From the ashes of war emerged the successor of Quezon, Manuel Rojas, who was also a longtime politician and a friend of the Allied Supreme Commander, General MacArthur. The American support and its involvement in cushioning the blow of the war led to his victory as the president of the post-war Philippines. Yet, he was not able to fulfill his promise to his fellow veterans due to his untimely death. So, he's the one who, after Aguinaldo, also obtained the Brigadier General position in the Philippine Army. The next veteran who held the highest position of the land was Ramon Magsaysay. Once a leader of a guerrilla military district, he channeled his popularity to politics and presented himself as the man of the people. Like Rojas, his death in the early part of his presidency left the many promises to the veterans unfulfilled. Magsaysay was succeeded by a former guerrilla and also a veteran politician in the form of Carlos P. Garcia. He implemented some of the promises of Magsaysay and was pivotal in centralizing the agencies of the veterans community. Later on, President Marcos emerged as the next leader and was instrumental in further centralizing the veterans affairs to include the medical care and later on the shrine building or memorialization in the Philippines. Ironically, the last veteran leader of this land was General Fidel Ramos. He would continue the process of his predecessors and play some important decisions which would have mixed effects in the prominence of the military and veterans in the national and local politics. So, all of them, most of them are also World War II veterans except Fidel Ramos. So Ramos would serve in the Korean and the Vietnam War. Now, these three variables more or less are the main concerns the veterans community since the creation of the country. Recognition leads to the acquisition of pension, and these two prerequisites, we remember the collective bravery of the veterans in this service. However, internal and external forces such as colonialism, shortness of funds, political ambition erodes these pillars over time, and such a cycle where all leaders look into are always in the process of a limbo. So there is, of course, the need for recognition. The first problem was the revolutionary veterans, later on the Second World War veterans, and it was normalized after the post-war, after World War II. Later on, the pension. Where do we get the pension? Because after the war, we don't have the money. So they would have to pivot to other means of getting the pension or providing benefits to the veterans. And also, we also need to see memorialization. How could the younger generation like us could remember these people if we don't engage with them? We already have, in the Philippines, we don't really have anymore the revolutionary veterans. But we also have World War II veterans. I think 1,000 World War II veterans are left in the Philippines. So if you can see in the discussion, this is the house of General Aguinaldo. You can see Ferdinand Marcos with the defenders of Batayan Corredor, the leaders of the veterans community. And here we could see, actually this is Eisenhower in the Libina Mga Bayani or the Heroes Cemetery. So it's very important for us to have this kind of pictures because it also shows how documented and how important it is in national and international politics. Now, during the first decades, what was the challenge was that there should be recognition. So both of them, Aguinaldo and Quezon, work hard to create care and assistance to their fellow veterans, especially to their widows and orphans. They focus on creating government offices to make sure the intended mandate and responsibility to its heroes remain in the long-term policy of the state. Because we cannot just provide or we cannot just look at it into a short term. We look at it as a long term, especially a state policy should be part of this discussion. So we could see here, from this emerged the desire to preserve various activities with the veterans were adapted to remember the heroic deeds. This was adopted by the immediate families of the veterans. So we could see here, the veterans would walk and remember what they did during the revolution. We could also see here President Magsaysay with the revolutionary veteran. So he's already old at that time. We could see here the commemoration of the veterans and the Great Lane ceremony at Rizal Park. And we could see here the celebration of the anniversary of the independence with the two presidents, Quirino and also Aguinaldo. Amidst this, Aguinaldo's involvement on Veterans Affairs and with the institutionalization of the Veterans Affairs, the General succeeded in becoming the face of the veterans community. So when we talk about General Aguinaldo, some people in the Philippines would say, oh, there is a contention. But in the eyes of the veterans, he is the face of the veterans community, especially those who served during the Philippine Revolution. This would be later on have a different perspective, but if you talk about someone who is a veteran, they will always remember General Emilio Aguinaldo or Myong. Despite the initial activities of recognition and remembrance, the truth emerged as the first casualty, as post-war politics created a new class of veterans. So the problem here is that there is a lot of veterans who were applying. Actually, after the war, there are more than 1 million veterans in the Philippines. So there's a need for innovation on the benefits. You don't need just a dole out. You need to make sure that it should be transformed. So later on, it will be transformed into educational benefits. So sons, daughters, and also the veteran themselves would have their opportunity to study as long as they prove to be a veteran. And after they studied, they would continue to work in the government or they would continue to work in the Philippines. So it's beneficial also for the country to invest to its people. So that's one way for them to make sure that this is an important undertaking. Next, we also have consolidation, because you need to make sure that everything should be efficient. So consolidation was also a key component of the post-war challenges and the response of the veterans. And of course, there's shrine development. If you go to the Philippines, one prominent area would be Mount Samat. There's a big cross in Mount Samat wherein they remember, of course, it's also connected with religion, but they also remember the fighting in Mount Samat where the deadly battles have fought during the Second World War. Central to this burden is the special relationship between the Philippines and the U.S. Aside from its biggest economic partner, historic ties with the U.S., especially during World War II, was regularly commemorated, and new commemorations often happen in new public spaces dedicated for the preservation of this memory. The Americans are also crucial in attaining economic reparations through delayed recognition and back pay. This dependency forced many veterans, especially those who serve as politicians, maintain a friendly tone to any American action in the country. So this is the state visit of former General, at that time, he was the President of the United States, Eisenhower, and of course, the former veteran, the former guerrilla also, Carlos P. Garcia. So they dominated the commemorations, they dominated also the memorials. So outside the US, the Philippines also harbors the biggest memorial of the Allied forces in Taguig, a city in Metro Manila. And there's also a need for funding. So the hospitals that was created as a means of reparation to the veterans was funded by the Americans. So this is intertwining, and it is also a problem wherein we are very dependent to the American aid for the fostering of the care of the veterans. So we could see here that it's very well connected. You can see the former President Rojas. You could see the former President Garcia with Eisenhower. Magsaysay is with President Nixon, who is also a veteran. And we also see here Garcia again with General MacArthur. And here in the American Cemetery, we could see President Ferdinand Marcos. So, to provide also an important undertaking on the development, we need to look also in the centralization of power, or also the state policy of the government of the Veterans Affairs. So both of them centralize the Veterans Affairs, both 1960 and 1977. So for Garcia, he centralized all the components of pension, while Marcos would centralize the non-pension and also the medical care for the veterans. He also added the component of shrine building in this scenario. So, why do we need to talk about President Marcos? Amidst all this, President Marcos embraced the identity of a veteran and used his image to strengthen and maintain his political career. So we need to know that through memory building, he was able to foster, or he was able to maintain his political career. And later on, of course, we all know what we have said a while ago, that his son was also the president now of the Philippines. So we just celebrated the Araw ng Kagitingan, or Day of Valor, and as the son of the former veteran, President Marcos takes priority in going there in the Mount Samat National Shrine. So what we witness is that there is the victory. So this was coined, or this was seen to be used from, at the time, the former Prime Minister of the British Empire, and then it was used by Marcos in addressing or in remembering what happened during the Second World War. Aside from that, you could see here that he's well connected to memorialization. So the Veterans of Bataan Corredor is an organization of World War II. The Veterans Federation was there also. And we also see here the Fisip NL, the guerrilla unit that he joined during the war. And aside from that, we can also see his wife, the First Lady, Imelda Marcos. She is the one who replaces the president when the time requires. So she was there in the inauguration of the Mariveles in Bataan, and also in the later landing. So they use this as a means of preserving their political capital also. So it all comes down to the last veteran who later on makes sure that the image of the military and the veterans is much cleaner compared to the previous time. Because Ramos, although he served for a very long time in the military, was able to make sure that his image as a peacekeeper remains to be part of the image of the veterans and also the military in the Philippines. So it's very crucial even today that we have that kind of image of the military, as there's a need for public trust. In conclusion, for better or for worse, past conflicts breed new leaders. From the military to public service, these former officers have gained legitimacy in the eyes of the people through their war experiences. These cadres transitioned from wartime to peacetime. Their political pedigree transformed the veterans community as a powerful bloc in both local and national politics. In this development, we coined the term veteran politics, wherein the country and its people are intertwined with the interests and activities of the Filipino veterans and their descendants. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Mr. Gianpaolo. It's quite interesting, yeah. I love how the conclusions can transform into a new knowledge for us. Turning veterans into political constituent. Interesting. Next one, and I think not the, I think it's the last one, yeah. I think it's the last one. It's going to be from Miss Irene yeah, G. Boras MA. She is currently pursuing her PhD in Asia Pacific Regional Studies at National Donghua University in Taiwan under a scholarship from the Ministry of Education. She is also on study leave from her position as a full-time history faculty member at the University of Santo Tomas, holds a bachelor's degree in social science and master's degree in history. Her dissertation focuses on the indigenous people of Orchid Island in Taiwan and their cultural ties with the Ivatans of Batanes, Philippines. The last one, her previous research explored Filipino-Chinese relations in the Philippines. Without further ado, we welcome you to the seats. Please grant her a warm applause.
Good morning. I promise that this will be very fast because I'm already the last presenter. This is my topic, Japan and East Asian integration, regionalization. So we are all familiar that regionalization is about countries forming international organizations like APEC, European Union, ASEAN, where we are all members of. So my topic is about Japan leading the regionalization in East Asia because for the longest time, we haven't heard of Japan leading an international organization in East Asia. I always use this political cartoon whenever I teach Japanese imperialism during the 1900s. Japan, as an Asian country, was always was always considered, they were always in equal footing with Western countries, especially during the 1900s. They were not seen as potential colony, unlike China. They were considered part of the as one of the Western countries. So there are two school of thoughts in Japan. Either after the war, they would exit Asia and join the West, which what happened with Japan. That's why we haven't heard of them, because they allied themselves with U.S., with Western countries. Or the only time that we've seen Japan in Asia forming well, we cannot say it's regionalization, was during the war wherein they established the Greater East Asia Economic Prosperity. But this is something negative of Japan. Compared to the regionalization, the idea of regionalization that we have right now. Before leading the international, the regionalization in East Asia, there's a lot of doubts regarding Japan's image, because they have a bad image they have a very bad image in the past. How can they lead the regionalization in East Asia, wherein a lot of countries, even after the war, were still very hesitant and doubtful of Japan? From time to time, they would send mixed signals. They would apologize, they paid for reparation, but still, the Prime Minister would visit the monument wherein Class A war criminals were buried. So they were sending mixed signals. According to one of the speakers in my university, Japan experienced apology fatigue. It's as if they got tired for the longest time that they've been apologizing. They said that they suffered from, they got tired of apologizing. But for them, how long are we going to apologize? They paid already for reparation. So they did not have this, they will not continue to put up this image that they were sorry for what happened in the war. And specifically, in their constitution, they have that peace clause, that after the war, they promise in the constitution that they will not engage in any wars that will consider them as an aggressor. Okay. So this is something favorable of Japan, but still, a lot of countries were hesitant of Japan. Okay. So they were very reluctant in terms of leading the regionalization in East Asia. They sided with the West. They were member of G7. I think the only, if not the only Asia, if I'm not mistaken, they were member of G7. And Japan felt that for the longest time, they have been doing well. So why lead a regionalization in Asia? Why go back to Asia? We're okay with the West there. So they did not see the need to do it. While at the same time, while Japan was aligning herself to the West, China was already building her image in Asia. So, but it's not that Japan was not really leading the regionalism in Asia. For the longest time, even after the war, Japan's product has been very much present in East Asia. Although they are not leading regionalization, their products are here. So through the FDI, in the Philippines after the war, these are the famous consumer products from Japan. TV, refrigerator, washing machine. So there was a study that Japan focused on these consumer products because after the war, they felt that the people, after receiving their salary, they would buy these kinds of consumer products. In the Philippines, in fact, in the 50s, 60s, you are considered a well-off already if you have a TV, especially this kind of TV that has doors, because it's very seldom, especially if it came from Japan. Japan products has this kind of good image to the Philippines, that it's of quality and that. And of course, they manufactured automobiles, the Honda, Toyota, Nissan, Mitsubishi Motors. Okay, so they've been, well, they have a relationship with Asia, although again, they're not leading the regionalization, but they are leading the FDIs in Asia, specifically here in East Asia, in Taiwan, and even in Southeast Asia. So the products of Japan are basically everywhere. Okay, so what triggers to East Asian regionalization? Why do we need to have East Asian regionalization? Because in Southeast Asia, we have the ASEAN, so which is very prominent. But in East Asia, they don't have, if we notice. The rise of China. Again, while Japan was busy aligning with the West, China is already building her empire and her allies here in Asia. So Japan felt that there's a joke that between Japan and China, Japan cannot see China winning too much, but Japan cannot also afford that China would lose. So we will compete with each other. Don't win too much, but don't also lose. Because if China would lose, Japan will also suffer. So, but don't win too much, Japan felt. And of course, America left Asia, their military bases, okay? And of course, the East Asian miracle during the 1990s, which brought economic prosperity to a lot of East Asian nations, including Japan, okay? And of course, the Asian financial crisis. In fairness to Japan, although they have a very bad image in the past, Japan was able to refresh their image by sending a lot of help, financial help specifically, to Asian countries. Unlike China, who's very exclusive in terms of regionalization, Japan wants to have an organization that will include also the Asia Pacific, like New Zealand, Australia, even India. So they would include these countries in Asia Pacific. So there's always that good intention of Japan. They lifted the economic sanction of China, which is basically, these are some of the steps by Japan in showing to the world that we can lead the East Asian regionalization. They were the first industrial state to offer support to China in its admission to WTO. They offered a huge amount of money after the Asian tsunami. Of course, the Chiang Mai Initiative, the new Miyazawa Initiative, these are the initiatives of Japan after Asian crisis. They offered very low interest rate to those countries who were affected by Asian financial crisis. Of course, also Japan is also China's largest source of overseas development assistance. And of course, we are familiar with the Mombushu Scholarship, which is very generous in terms of giving help to, it's like the Erasmus of Europe also. So Japan has always been willing to help specifically financially, which sometimes we cannot see with other countries. Okay. So these are some of the initiatives of Japan in helping the countries in not only in East Asia, but also Southeast, specifically Southeast Asia. There. Okay, the Chiang Mai Initiative. These are after the Asian financial crisis. So this is the examples of Japan's ODA. They are also very active in achieving the SDG of the United Nations. They have public-private partnership. In fact, in the Philippines, we already canceled the BRI projects supported by China because the new president now is not in favor of China. So he canceled the BRI project, the Belt and Road project, the infrastructures being supported by China. Japan is now being considered as a potential supporter of the Philippines in terms of these infrastructures. And they offer very low interest rate. And of course, disaster, human rights, and reconciliation, human rights and reconstruction. In fact, during the Asian tsunami, they were the biggest donor for financial help to a lot of countries in Southeast Asia. And of course, they are also very prominent in terms of sending messages to the international community, especially if there's an aggression of some countries in Southeast Asia, like this one, when Japan somehow sided with the Philippines when they issued a memorandum saying to China to honor the decision of the International Tribunal regarding the West Philippine Sea. So it takes a leader, a country who can lead for them to be able to issue a statement like this, and also measures taken by the government of Japan against North Korea, banning the North Korean citizens to go to Japan. So these are some of the initiatives also of Japan regarding the atrocities of North Korea. And of course, Japan has always been an ally of Taiwan with its regarding its war with China. Like 2 weeks ago, we were so worried when we were in Taiwan that we will be bombed by China. My family members were all messaging me, go home, China will bomb you. And Japan was very constant in terms of their support with Taiwan. Taiwan is a colony of Japan for like 50 years there. Okay, so these are some of the, although after all just some thoughts to ponder. After all my discussion regarding the capability of Japan to lead East Asian regionalization and their genuine help to the region in terms of financial help, this is the conclusion. Sadly, the future cooperation in the region, in East Asia, will be shaped solely by the relationship between the United States and China. Japan retains its role as an important player in the region, but the leadership position has been apparently taken by China. So somehow China's, not military aggressiveness, but their aggressiveness in terms of lending money to poor countries, engaging into military exercises, they were able to really build an image that they can lead the countries in East Asia, but Japan would still be a very important player in the region. Okay, thank you so much. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Irene, for the, I think, very mind-opening presentations concerning Japan and its effort for their regionalism since 1996, yeah, I suppose. So that concludes our presentations for today. All of our speakers. Now we are advancing to the new stage or sessions, which is the Q&A sessions. So I'm expecting one of you, it's both from either from my colleagues or from my own students, to give 1 or 2 questions, especially because we are so restricted in time limit. I think we only got 10 minutes, yeah, 10 minutes remaining before we need to hit the break. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Raise your hand. Okay. I see 2 hands actually. It's okay if you still want to ask. I'm accepting 3. We have 4 now. Okay, so we're limiting only 4. Please help me. Okay. Okay. Please say your name, what study program you're from, and give out your questions. Yeah.
Hello everyone. Magandang umaga po. My name is Aisha Ardani and I'm from International Relations 2022. And my question is more about the cultural diplomacy. So my question is, considering of our shared Austronesian roots that was mentioned by Professor Malani before, can cultural diplomacy be a more central part of Indonesia and Philippines cooperation? And if so, what kind of initiatives could be effective for that? Thank you.
Thank you. The questions will be answered directly by Professor Malani.
Hello, magandang umaga din sa'yo. Well, first and foremost, cultural diplomacy is something that we should both engage in because we belong to the same roots. Therefore, we may find a lot of similarities in terms of some practices, traditions, perhaps. This may also be ways on how we will be able to enrich and empower people by promoting the culture that you have, and of course, enticing Filipinos to learn much about our culture, because I am a cultural heritage enthusiast, and it is sad. Well, I will rant in a country that I admire in terms of culture. We may have the same rich culture, but I can say, I don't know if my colleagues would agree, that Filipinos are more colonial than what we have that is very rich in the past. That's why I often make use of Indonesia as an example in cultural history. Because even if we are in the 21st century and a digital world and meeting Gen Z individuals, culture still remains in Indonesia. And we still feel how the country, through its leaders, the school administrators, have imposed the importance of culture. And that is, of course, the love of one individual to their language, because we may be good English speakers, but we lack knowledge in terms of the dialects in the Philippines, and that is sad. Because the number one root or foundation of a child is that something that's domestic. It should be the foundation that he will be bringing, he or she will be bringing when he will represent he or himself in the outside world. And that is something that, well, sad to say, we lack, because Filipinos are more engaged global than what's inside. So in terms of cultural diplomacy, perhaps it's you who will be, the one that would create this diplomatic ties so that we will be able to remember and to be refreshed that we belong to the same race and we indeed have a rich, untouched culture, a civilized past that we have to live and promote with.
Okay, maraming salamat po.
Salamat, terima kasih.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning everyone. Magandang umaga po. Kamusta? My name is Fatur Rahman, and earlier when Prof. RC delivered material about the political culture, I remember about dialogue with my friends from Philippines. We often exchange information about these two republics because there are so many similarities and tension that occur from the political concept between the Philippines and Indonesia. So as these two countries adhere to multi-party presidential system with the political tendencies of the dynasty from the Philippines and the military oligarchy from Indonesia. So I want to ask about this. How can we see this similarity as a good diplomatic relationship in the term of the democracy? Thank you very much for, this is my question, and salamat.
Thank you so much for that question. Unfortunately, that's the problem between the Philippines and Indonesia. As I have mentioned, strong partisanship in the Philippines is actually the same with that of Indonesia. Would you imagine in our legislature, we have father and son tandem as senators, and then in coming election this May, we are going to have 3 brothers as senators because they are leading the survey. Strong family attachment in the Philippines is not bad. In fact, it's good. However, if you translate that in politics, it becomes nepotism, which is in fact against the American-inspired democracy that they wanted for the Filipinos. I don't know if in Indonesia, each provinces would also cater in supporting a particular political figure. Is that the same in your country? Like for example, in Surabaya, you have a common candidate there. In Yogyakarta or even in Jakarta, especially for the presidents and the members of the parliament. Usually the tendency is like that. So the key is education. We need to educate the Filipinos and the Indonesians regarding this kind of political culture. Otherwise, it's just going to repeat. The system will again repeat. Like we are going to elect dictators. We are going to have authoritarian leaders. Graft and corruption will become very rampant in the Philippines and Indonesia. So young students like you, especially in political science, should be educated very well, and you should also educate other people, especially those who have not achieved enough educational background in your country. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Just, yes, please, your name and where are you coming from? Thank you.
Morning everyone, magandang umaga po. My name is Guira Zetristiawan. I'm from International Relations with the student number 213. I have a questions to Ms. Irene regarding your presentation about Japanese and its regionalism. I remember the point of you saying that Japan would not want to win so much and lose against China. And now the position of leadership in Asia is now apparently being held by China. My question is, I remember back in August of 2024, there's a joint training with the Philippines in the South China Sea with Japan and the US. Do you think this is a way of Japan restoring the balance of power in the Asian regional? And is there a way for Japan to take back the leadership from China? Thank you very much.
We have to remember that one of the hindrance of Japan exploring military exercises in Asia was because of the peace clause written in their constitution. Unlike China, who can engage into militarization, they're really investing too much in their military. Japan cannot do that because Japan has always been conscious of this bad image that they have, that once we militarized again, that we will really support again the military. They have this image that they will be aggressive again. Because you have to remember, until today, in South Korea, even in the Philippines, they did not apologize to some of the atrocities. According to the speaker that we had in school, every Wednesday in South Korea, the South Koreans will go to the Japanese embassy to demand that they apologize to the comfort women. They did not also do that too. So that's the hindrance of Japan exercising military powers. They cannot do that because of their constitution. They have a peace clause. They will not militarize so much, and that they're very careful about this bad image that they had in the past, which is very fortunate and unfortunate at the same time, because we wanted them to militarize and be able to defend a lot of Asian countries. So militarize, but also don't militarize because we had trauma with them in the past. So that's I think the.
Thank you very much. Salamat po.
I think we can still accept 3 more questions here. We have a lot of questions here.
Okay.
Yes, please.
So, good morning everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So, my name is Mulkari Rahman. So, my question is probably for Professor Archie. How do social media shape partisanship and public perception of democracy in Philippines? Because in Indonesia, recently we have Indonesia Gelap and Kabur Aja Dulu hashtag as a movement that become trending in social media. These movements appeared in social media as a form of public dissatisfaction towards many aspects in our democracy and shape a new perception of how our people point of view regarding our democracy. However, some of the President Prabowo's partisans on social media consider this movement as a foreign propaganda, and the demonstrators are a paid demonstrator, so they are not a real demonstrator, but a paid demonstrator. So yeah, again, my question is, how do social media shape partisanships and public perception of democracy in the Philippines? Thank you.
That's a very good question. In the Philippines, if you can recall, President Marcos was removed in 1986. They were very unpopular. Okay, so they returned in 1992 and they began shaping public perception by means of social media. Before, well, you have, of course, the Facebook, and then lately the TikTok in the Philippines, which is very famous. A lot of the facts that were being presented were actually what we call in the Philippines as supposedly fake news. These are not really facts. For example, projecting that the former president's era, Marcos, was a golden age in the Philippine political history. Well, the reality, we cannot really deny the fact that during the time of Marcos, there are a lot of people who were killed, who were massacred, they were put behind bars or incarcerated because they go against the presidency of Marcos. But lately, when the son ran for presidency, this was turned out to be a golden age. So there is already a mass propaganda and social media or social medium, what we call fake news. And the problem is distortion in history. Well, if you are going to revise history in the Philippines, it's not bad as long as you have new data available that can support it. But if it is gathered by means of fake news, then it shapes public opinion negatively. That's why you have presidents that kills people or criminals without justice or due process. You have the son of the dictator, who is also unaccountable for, especially the crimes that they have committed during the 1970s. So this is how fake news in social media affects and shapes public opinion in the Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Three more questions left for the students. Yes. Okay then. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dina Jasmine. I will ask to Professor Melanie. Like as you mentioned, the relationship between Indonesia and the Philippines has been established for a long time and is historical. At present, is there any significant cooperation in sectors like security or economy? And what is the Philippine point of view on Indonesia's current political issues, such as militarism and oligarchy? Will it be affect Indonesia and the Philippine relations? Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
That's a tough one. I will, can I speak as a historian and not as a political scientist? Maybe there would be a difference in the point of view. Well, the reason why we engage in an organization is to maintain harmonious relations. And I think, if we may give comments, we may give our insights on what's happening, but diplomatic ties will become problematic if our personal views be the view of or the stand of the nation in particular. That's why more often than not, we may have our internal problems and we feel the support of our Southeast Asian counterparts with us in terms perhaps if war would come in, but in how our leaders manage the state, there should be exclusivity or there should be non-interference because to be perfectly honest, I don't think our country has this right to tell the Indonesian government that what type of leadership you're doing is wrong. Because as we all know, the nation where we belong also has its own internal stripes when it comes to governance. But what I think would be best, diplomatically speaking, is that we learn from each other's experiences. You know for a fact how difficult it is when a government is ruled only by few. And we know also for a fact, and we are sharing with you how difficult it will be for our country to be run only by some families. That's why perhaps make use of what you learn in school. This is something that is a reflection or point of reflection for us educators, because what we say to our students would be the basis on how they will be motivated, on how later on how they would want their future, stance, political stance it may be. That's why as learners or those educated in the field of political science or international relations, make use of this academic exchanges and research more on what we think would be best for our country. Because, as previously asked by one of your classmates or one of the students here, if we keep on believing on the snippets of what we learn from social media, that would become a problem. The people would make use of that avenue to spread hate, to spread, false information. But as educators and learners with regard to international relations, political science, and communication, it's our task to correct the notion and to make the future of our nations a better place. No? So I cannot speak that what we can advise your country to do this and that, because we ourselves are having difficulties as well. So we learn from you, you learn from us, and we make use of that learning to become better next time. No? Because the problem is if we just, take note of what we learn and make it as part of the fulfillment of a requirement, then these countries will never have a good future. But if we make time to reflect and be beacons of change in our personal self, then perhaps we may not be able to change the world, but we can make use of our voice to somehow spearhead a simple change. And I think it would become a domino effect, and the change will be felt later, or in the time, perhaps, God willing, will be able to see in this lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Professor.
I think we're only accepting last one, yeah, because we have another midterm test waiting for the students. One last, yeah.
Hello, my name is Emir Clement Jamal. I'm a student from International Relations. I think one of the speakers today spoke a lot about Mindanao. I think that was Professor Janet. So my question would be that in the very first part of your presentation, you mentioned that there was a significant amount of the Muslim population living in Mindanao. And as we all know, I think from the early 20th century or late 20th century into the early 2000s, this Muslim population had a very big sentiment for separatism within Mindanao. I also happen to know this because, of course, it was a very kind of popular information, if I would say. I even know some figures like Nur Miswari, right? And I think this sort of Muslim separatism is very relevant, especially in Southeast Asia, if we look at countries like Thailand and even in Indonesia. So my question would be, can you give us a brief explanation at, the history of it, how it managed to happen, what was the government response? And I guess my biggest question would be, how are things today? Are there still, big sentiments towards separatism? Are there still like tensions between the government, between mainland Filipino people and Muslim people in Mindanao? How are things today? Thank you.
Whenever I have my students, the first thing that I always tell them, always tell your panelists, you stick to the topic and you don't go beyond that. So I'm going to give you the same answer. I'm sorry, my topic is on the Lumad, the non-Muslim and non-Christians, but I'll try. One personal note, the idea of the MNLF actually started in the bedroom of my uncle. He was a close friend of Nur Miswari, but he was a Christian, so he did not join into that. But he knew about the entire situation. Oh, he's dead now, so although he told us about that story. What is the situation now? There is already the BRMM that is now, it's being Bangsang Moro, ano yun? Bangsang Moro Autonomous Region. So from the original ARMM, they had an election and they came up with, I don't know if it's a truer reflection, but this time the area is a little bit smaller than the ARM, because ARM was simply created by the Philippine government, Autonomous Region for Muslim Mindanao. It became BARM, Bangsang Moro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao. So now, according to papers that I have seen, because I also advise students on BARM, there are more specific, not only on the political side, but like they are creating economic aspects, like creating jobs for these Muslim people. They are in fact getting nurses and doctors. They created a hospital, and this will be manned, or it is being manned by Muslim people, Muslim teachers also for the schools. So there is more emphasis on the economic side now, more than the political side. And the Philippine government is also, I don't know, for whatever reason, they are more receptive to BARM than to the autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao, the old one. Simply because in this, as I have mentioned, there is more emphasis on the economic side and probably on the material side more than the political side. So as of now, I don't know where the funding came from, but there is a very active participation in BARM, more than in ARM. So it's doing very, very well. In my mind, probably because there is more participation of the ordinary people, especially on the economic side. I think there is, again, in my opinion, they have more interest in having having a better economic situation than fighting for the political aspect. So that's what I've been reading about. That's why it's more popular, and the government also supports that. So in my heart and in my mind, I will also support that kind of path. It's the more peaceful one, and it's the more fruitful one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Janet. I think that sums our meeting for today, because first of all, we have already 11 minutes past of the time limits, and I think the students have another midterm exams waiting for them. So good luck for everyone. Okay, there you have it, a very mind-engaging and knowledge-prompting experience. Yeah, it's very limited. The time is very limited, but we experience and knowledge a lot of similarities across the institutions and the countries. So I would like to say thank you for my friends and colleagues from University of Santo Tomas. I hope this is not going to be the last meeting and friendly encounter that we're gonna have later in the future. My name is Kamil Givari, and I'm giving back my sessions to the MC. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Camille, for our moderator for today, and also thank you for all of our speakers for the very insightful presentation today, and also thank you for answering all of the questions.